Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be back here with you today. I'm Kelly Jo, and I have been up traveling back home in my home state of Alaska, and I was going through my storage unit. Yes, we have a storage unit because we live down south in warmer weather, and so we still kind of keep a footprint here as well. But I found all these books, and I don't know about you, but I love books. I have Kindle and I use that too, but there's just something about physical books. So I wanted to share some of the books that have been really helpful for me for motherhood, from preparing to get pregnant to being pregnant, preparing for postpartum, and even childcare. I'm just going to share. A lot of these are from a natural perspective or holistic. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, so there's a lot of nutrition in here, but this is like, right, if you have to have good fuel, right? You got to put good fuel in the car, or what we eat, right? Really impacts us. It impacts our fertility, how our pregnancies go, how our postpartum goes, and actually how our kids develop. So I'm going to lead with one of my absolute favorites, Lily Nichols. She is a dietitian and she wrote Real Food for Pregnancy. And this book, man, this has been so transformative for so many of us in the nutrition space. It's very meaty, very dense, but she goes basically through what optimal foods, which is basically just real food. We live in a culture that we consume so much packaged food, pre-made food, boxed food, which I get it. I'm a mom, and sometimes you just need to go throw in some mac and cheese and, have dinner easy and made. But there is so much benefit when we can consume real foods. She talks about what is real food, and then what do our bodies actually need from a nutrition standpoint. The other one she has is just Real Food for Gestational Diabetes. A lot of people just think, oh, I already have a precondition to this, or there's nothing you can do about it, which is so not true. There is so much you can do, especially if you know you are prone towards blood sugar imbalances, to actually regulate your blood sugar before you ever get pregnant. This is actually a huge key when it comes to fertility and different fertility issues, PCOS. You really want to make sure that you have stable blood sugars. I did an interview with Lily Nichols on our podcast, and so I'm going to link that below too. If you'd rather listen, she has some really good nuggets, advice, and input and guidance that we have on the podcast. I guess the last thing I'll say about this, it's nutrition it's going to benefit you before you have your baby, while you're pregnant, while you're recovering, even feeding your kids is going to help with their development. So these are really great. While I'm still thinking kind of some pre-pregnancy or postpartum stuff, Dr. Aviva Romm, she's a medical doctor and OBGYN, but she's also a midwife, and she just has so much wisdom. I really respect her opinion on so many things. And so she wrote the Hormone Intelligence Guide. And this one, man, this is so packed with different information about balancing your hormones. But what she's really great is she has these holistic protocols for each of these different things, from, estrogen dominance to low progesterone to PCOS, endometriosis. So a lot of her stuff is just influenced the work I've done and how I've worked with clients, what I've put in our course. I'm also a big believer of just having a library that when something goes wrong, that I don't just have to go to a doctor, which is great when I need to, but to be able to be empowered with resources and education and knowledge to take care of a lot of things at home, I just think is really important. So this is definitely one I think every household should have because of that. Since I'm just talking about books to have on hand in your library, this is one you might not read all the way through. It's called the Nourishing Traditions book of a baby and childcare. There's also Nourishing Traditions. These are by Fallon. She follows Weston A. Price, which has also greatly influenced a lot of my philosophy and just really what's been the norm for centuries, because we live in such a tech-connected society, so plugged in, all these innovations really over the last 100 years, 150 years. But people have been living for thousands of years a certain way. So what did they eat? How did they care for their babies? What did they do for when certain health concerns came up in their home? There's just so much wisdom in how we've been doing things for a long time. The Nourishing Traditions book, I don't have it right here with me. I think it's actually in my storage unit, but I read it before I got pregnant, and there was a whole section on fertility foods that for generations people would consume. Both the man and the woman would consume it before they ever thought about trying to get pregnant, or like in those like 3 to 6 months prior. I talk a lot about how important that window is. I call it the golden window, because it just really impacts not only your fertility, but it impacts your child's health for the long term, and even how you'll recover. So the Nourishing Traditions book is a really good one in terms of like better understanding the food we eat, but there's a lot of just really great recipes in it that will help support your whole body, hormones, fertility, whatnot. But this is kind of a follow-up one. And again, you might not read the whole thing, but there are all these protocols, I don't know what to do with your baby, that are more like naturally minded. You might not use them all the time, but it talks about everything from like nutrition for fetal development, like healthy pregnancy, preparing for your baby, once your baby's born, newborn interventions, vaccines, nourishing your baby, bringing up your baby, like milestone markers. Like then there's actually, when there's health concerns in childhood, there's a lot in here that just gives you a different perspective. And again, I just think it's good to have on the bookshelf. I love being able to come back to this time and time again. Pregnant mamas. This is another huge, thick one. It's called The Motherly Guide to Becoming Mama, Redefining Pregnancy, Birth, and the Postpartum Journey. This is put together by a couple different people, but largely influenced by a midwife. And you can tell I have read through this front to back. I'm always wanting to learn additional, gather information, and I like to bring that back to you. But this is as much a journey of my motherhood, journey of becoming, and I like to share things I learn along the way with you guys. This is great. This goes through, really walks you through your whole pregnancy. A lot in here around how to conceive, miscarriage and loss, pregnancy by month, giving birth, so all the things about going through labor, and then the 4th trimester. And these are all things I cover in my course, so if you're like, I don't want to read a thick book, I cover all of this stuff from preconception, pregnancy, childbirth education, and then like postpartum recovery in my Nourish to Flourish course. So I know some of us would rather listen to something or watch something. So I also have tons of like handouts and stuff in there that can help support you along your journey. But just want to show some of the things that have inspired me along the way. Here are some other ones that really start before you ever have a baby. Again, nutrition is so important in that preconception window, but through pregnancy, postpartum, and then what do you feed your babies? What's good? What are babies' first foods? So this one is called Beautiful Babies, Nutrition for Fertility, Pregnancy, Breastfeeding, and Babies' First Foods. So this one I love because it talks about like when baby can start eating, what foods to introduce, what foods to hold off, how different foods impact development, even through pregnancy as well. And then how does that impact breastfeeding? Because yes, your nutrition impacts the quality of your breast milk. If you are breastfeeding, being just cognizant of what you're eating is impacting baby, both in it shapes like what you eat helps shape your baby's taste buds, but also it helps contribute towards their overall growth and development. So this just kind of goes through that. So I really like this one. And then really moving into postpartum. So whether this is your first baby, whether you're a repeat mom and it's baby number 3, number 4, number 5, each time we grow and become something we weren't before, our capacity grows, and especially that first baby going from, maiden to mother, this journey of matrescence it's called, but it's really important. It's not really honored in our society. So I have a few books on postpartum because so much emphasis during pregnancy goes into like mom during pregnancy, but really the baby, when I think we need to spend more time with mom. So Some of my favorites, I started reading this, I think, before I was ever pregnant 6 years ago. It's The First 40 Days, The Essential Art of Nourishing the New Mother. Now this, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's a beautiful book, first of all. And I actually handed it to my mother-in-law. It was like, any of the recipes in here, please can you make them? And so I think my first postpartum meal with my daughter was the garlic fried rice, stir fry. It's so good. Ginger, not garlic, ginger fried rice. It was really good with liver recipe in here. And it was just, I would never do liver beforehand, but I've become a convert, not because I necessarily always love it, but because it is just so nourishing. I actually noticed such a difference with it. So this actually kind of helped me dip my toes into it. So the neat thing is she goes through all these different traditions around the world. She has a Chinese background, so that really largely influences this book, but that cultures around the world and for generations have had specific rituals, traditions, foods to support a woman through fertility, pregnancy, and that postpartum period. And we have lost so much of that like beautiful ancient wisdom. So she goes through that here. Those first 6 weeks, 40 days after you give birth, I guess it's 5 weeks, but are just so essential for how you recover and setting new rhythms, becoming comfortable, learning your baby. So she talks about all of that, plus has just some really dreamy recipes in the back. Congee, she introduced me to congee, just great smoothies, great teas. So this one is definitely one of my absolute favorites that I love to gift new mamas. This one, the Postnatal Depletion Cure, whoa, by Dr. Oscar Serrallach. I'm just so thankful for this guy and the work he's gone to really support moms. And he talks about, so we lose about 10% of our minerals while we are pregnant to our babies. It's like 4 pounds of minerals, guys. So we need to replenish those things. But when we don't have those things, it really can set off a domino factor because our body needs certain nutrients to function. So all these other health issues can come up even like 5, 10, 15 years down the road because we're not actually nourished. And it's even more so for moms who've had 1, 2, 3, 4 pregnancies. And if you've had a lot of pregnancies back to back, it's even more so important that you take the time to replenish. So he really just goes through that, what that looks like, why it's important. He brings in the science. He's a medical doctor. And I just really loved this one. And this one is really tiny. I found it like at a used bookstore one day. It's called Newborn Mothers. When a Baby is Born, So is a Mother by Julia Jones. And this one, first of all, I just like love the cover, and there's nothing as stretching and rewarding I found as motherhood. And like our brains actually change, our bodies change, and we actually become new. We're not going back. It's like when we go through adolescence, right? We're the same person, but we're also vastly different from who we were pre-puberty. And so again, there's that other life stage of becoming a mom or going matrescence from maiden to mother. And a lot happens. And I think a lot for the better, to be honest. And so, but we don't always have the care and support we need. But this is just like a really beautiful book about all these things that happen. And she talks even about the brain stuff that happens. And it's like you have a whole new brain, which is really cool. So I really love this one. A couple books that aren't here. One is The Body Keeps the Score. I've mentioned that in other videos, but that one is so good when it comes to, I guess back up. We are a whole person, like our spirit, our soul, our body, and all of that impacts our fertility, it impacts our pregnancy, impacts how birth goes and our postpartum recovery. And The Body Keeps the Score talks about how trauma and different our emotional well-being and different emotions can actually impact our physical well-being. It's so fascinating to see how they really are so linked. I'll make sure to link that one up below. So stress is a huge issue when we live in such a fast-paced society too. So many of us long for a simpler life, a slower life. I just think we just feel so at the, I don't know, mercy of our society and how things are going, and we just get into these ruts, and we're just reacting versus responding. And so one of the first things we need to do is address our stressors, address how we're living our life. And this book, it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And I love this book because he just really, he breaks it down as a society. It's a faith-based book too. So he talks about the spiritual implications, the mental, emotional implications, and the physical implications of really living this like fast, more, better. It's never enough. And all of this impacts, not just if it's going to impact like fertility or pregnancy or birth, but your motherhood. And everything I want to share for myself is I want to like thrive in motherhood, and I want to enjoy it because these moments are so precious. Yes, there's plenty of hard moments, but there's so many precious moments at the same time. And when I am just reacting or I need more, I don't know, this book was really helpful to put into words things I had already been practicing, gave me insights into new things I wanted to like practice. So if you are looking for a simpler life, you know something needs to change, maybe things feel out of whack, this is a really great spot, I think, to start. So it's not maybe motherhood per se, but this has definitely impacted my motherhood, and just having a part of the reason we live down south, we live down in the Caribbean on a little island. It's a slower, simpler life, and it's something I can be more present. And not all of us can do that, but I do believe even before that, like I was taking steps to, what does it look like to, tend to the garden of my heart, my emotions, my spirit, but my mental well-being. And part of that was minimalism, which, guys, Montessori Toddler, this is another good one, the Montessori Toddler. But like, how do we just have toys that we absolutely love and are like insanely intentional and purposeful for our kids? They don't have to be expensive. My kids' favorite toys are literally wood sticks and cardboard boxes and blocks. So I know when I have more stuff around that I have to manage, that it takes a toll on me. So I know this is all over the place, but if we're gonna thrive in motherhood, it's a whole person approach. And so it is what we're eating, right? It's the real food. It's what we listen to, it's what we absorb, it's what we see, it's our surroundings in our house, it's how we structure our day. And so and you don't have to make huge vast changes, but often just like small, like little calibrations can make the world of difference. I come from a sailing background, and so navigation, don't believe me, here's a sailing book with all these knots. Actually, I'm gonna take this home with me. But in sailing, your compass, right, you have all these little degrees in it. So you're seeing where you're going. So when you're navigating, even if you end up like 1 degree off, let's say it's not really a big deal if you're just going a short distance, right? If you're like, I'm just gonna we're veering off a little bit, going off a little here. But if you're traveling like 10, 12 hours or longer, like hundreds, thousands of miles, depending on how fast your vessel's going, but it can actually, so instead of just like, it only looks like this on the compass rose, but over the distance in hours of travel, all of a sudden, like, well, you wanted to get here, but now you're all the way over here. So often it's just like these small little tweaks to our thinking, to how we show up, what we eat, that can have a huge difference. So anyways, I know these are kind of a hodgepodge of books, and if you stayed with me till the end, you're amazing. But I just wanted to, before I put these back in storage, I was like, wow, these are such great books, and I wanted to share them with you guys because they've been so beneficial to me as well. So anyways, I would love to know, what are your top 1 to 3 favorite books in the comments below when it comes to motherhood. And it could, again, be spiritual, emotional, physical, any of like the whole person reality. I would love to know. I'm constantly enjoying wanting to read more myself. I learned from you guys. So anyways, let me know. And if you've read any of these, I want to know too your thoughts in the comments below. So, all right, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next week.